Well, welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. Do I have a treat for you? My friend Ellen, who is a wonderful baker and bakes all her family's bread, has a recipe for easy wheat bread that gives you scrumptious yeast bread in about an hour. Here are the ingredients. You can pause and write them down, or you can go to my Facebook group, Cooking from Scratch on Debbie's Back Porch, and you'll find the recipe there in the files, and you can meet Ellen. Now let's get cooking. I'm going to start by going over the ingredients. I have the water here, and this is tap water at about 100 degrees. You really don't want your water much warmer than that. Hot water will kill the yeast. Back there I have the sugar, the salt, and I have here active dry yeast. Now, in another video I used instant yeast. They're pretty much interchangeable, but this recipe calls for active dry yeast. I have here something called Vital Wheat Gluten, and this is new for me. I couldn't find it in my grocery store. I ordered it from Amazon. It adds gluten. We're using some whole wheat flour, which doesn't have much gluten. So we're adding the Vital Wheat Gluten. And really that's the key, the secret ingredient to making this happen so fast. Then I have the salt, I have the sugar, I have some oil, and this is bread flour. And you can use all-purpose flour. And this is whole wheat flour. And yes, I know it's white, but it is King Arthur's white wheat flour. You can use the regular whole wheat if you want, same thing. Now the first thing you want to do with active dry yeast is proof the yeast. And we've put the warm water, the sugar, and the active dry yeast in this bowl, and I've mixed them up. This takes 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm going to let you watch the time lapse here as you see it growing and increasing in size and getting bubbly. You don't have to do this with instant yeast, but you can. It doesn't matter. So we're about ready here to go on with our recipe. And you can see how creamy that is and bubbly, and that means you've got good yeast. If it doesn't do that, your yeast could be dead. You need some new. Next we add the oil and mix that in just a little bit. And then we will add all of the dry ingredients. And this is the only recipe I've ever seen where you just put all the flour in. I suppose if it were too dry, there goes the salt, you could add just a little bit of water, but it worked out perfectly. I didn't have to add any water. That is the Vital Wheat Gluten. And boy, you know, that stuff is magic. I'm going to tell you. This bread rose so quickly and so well, you almost had to fight it back. So this is the bread flour. And as I said, you can use all-purpose. Bread flour has just a little more gluten, a little more protein in it than all-purpose flour. That's the only difference. And then this is the whole wheat flour. And I'll scoop all that in there. And you know, I should have taken the bowl away from the mixer, but I didn't. And so I'll just struggle with the angle here and try to get it all out. And if all else fails, just use your hands. So I'm going to mix that up a little bit with my spatula. Not a whole lot. I'm going to let the mixer do most of the work. And did I tell you I got a new KitchenAid? My kids got it for me. They're good kids. And got the dough hook on. Ever since I got it, I've been making bread. By the way, I named it Julia for Julia Child because she is my culinary hero. So we're just going to turn this on, mix it, and watch and see what happens. Making bread's magic. This is magic. Now when the dough pulls away from the side of the pan, the side of the bowl is clean, we're going to start timing the knead. You see that the bowl is pretty clean there. And I'm going to give this about a 7-minute knead, and then I'll check it, and I'll show you the window pane test if you haven't seen that before, after 7 minutes. So it's been about 7 minutes. I'm going to turn it off and check it. And you know, you can actually tell by the way it looks. It gets very smooth and elastic looking. And the window pane test, you should be able to pull it apart without it tearing. And no, it's not ready. I'm going to knead it for about another minute, and then we'll try it again. And this window test works better if you wet your hands just a little bit. So what we're trying to do is get the dough to the point where it's elastic enough. Well, let me try that again. Elastic enough to pull apart, get very, very thin, thin enough for you to see light through it without tearing. And there you go. You can see. I never know how much you can see on the video, but you can see the light through it. It stretches out like a rubber band. It gets thin. You can see through it without tearing. So I'm going to mix it just for about 30 seconds more while I get my pan ready. So I've turned this out on a floured board, and I have to tell you, well, this is my cast iron pan that I just oiled liberally, and I want to try to make this fit in that pan, but heads up, it really won't fit in that pan because that pan is smaller than your standard pan. I'll have to cut a little bit away, but that's okay. I'll make rolls out of it. So I'm just smoothing this out a little bit, and then I'm going to roll it. And you probably don't really have to roll it. You could just press it down with your hands and get all the bubbles out. But my hands have gotten a little bit weak, so I use a rolling pin. And you can hear the bubbles popping. This bread is already rising. I tell you, it is getting puffy. It's very elastic. It's very smooth. It's lovely dough. But it's already rising. This recipe has about twice the yeast that you normally put in a loaf of bread. Plus it has the Vital Wheat Gluten. So what we're getting is a very elastic, very lovely dough. And, you know, I need to put a clean dish towel under this so it won't slide. I'll be right back. That's one of those things I always mean to do and usually forget to do. So it'll be much easier to roll now. Let me move my camera just a little bit. So here we go. Now I'm going to roll this out a little bit wider than my pan, because as I said, my pan is a little bit smaller than your standard pan. And this is a dough that's going to rise pretty quickly. So I want to make sure that I cut some of it away so that it doesn't over-rise. I don't want it to be too far over the pan. I'm going to just brush some of the flour off. If you may keep a little brush for that. I don't. I just brush it off with my hands. But I'm going to roll it out now. I've just about stopped hearing the bubbles pop. So I think it's rolled out about enough. And really, it keeps making bubbles as I'm rolling it. So now we're going to roll it up kind of tightly. And you know, you don't really have to roll it up. You can just fold it over to the size you want it. But I think the rolling gives it a nice pattern and texture inside. So see how big this is? This has grown just while I was rolling it. And let me wet my hands just a little bit. And I'm going to put just a tiny little bit of water on the dough so that end sticks. And then I'm going to pinch it because I don't want it to come apart while it's baking. And the water really helps with that, by the way. So just kind of get it in there where it's secured. And then I'm going to trim it to fit my pan. If you're using a full-size 9x5 pan, you won't have to trim it. This leftover dough, I'm going to make some little rolls for dinner, and we can eat them while they're hot, and we have to let the bread cool. So I'm going to pinch the edges together and turn it over, kind of tuck under, and you'll see that's nice and smooth on the top. And it fits the pan just right. Then I'll oil a little plastic wrap. You can use spray if you use spray. I don't use spray. I just use some oil. I'm going to rub enough on it to keep it from sticking to my dough, because we want the bread to rise up just a little bit. We want it to crown just over the top of the pan. And I don't want the bread dough to stick to the plastic. If it does, then you'll deflate it when you remove the plastic. So I'm going to set this over beside my stove. I have my stove preheating. I'm going to go ahead and set this close to the stove. It's the only good warm place in the kitchen. It's about 80 degrees. And in just a little over 15 minutes, this is what we have. I think it was 17 minutes. The bread is just crowning over the top of the pan. We're going to put this in a preheated oven at 350 for 25 minutes. Then we'll check it. So 25 minutes later, is that beautiful or what? But looks can be deceiving. We're going to check the temperature. This bread needs to have an internal temperature of 200. So I'm sticking a candy thermometer in. You can use an instant read thermometer. This is just a regular thermometer. And this bread is just not done. It looks done. It's a beautiful color. It's golden brown. But it's only 190 degrees inside, so it could be gummy. So we're going to put it back in the oven for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, we'll test it again. And this is not an instant read thermometer, but I can tell you it goes up. And our bread is now at 205 degrees internal temperature. And that's going to make for some perfect bread. I'm so excited I can hardly wait. So I'm going to turn this out. And you know, I actually struggle with this cast iron. It's a little heavy, but oh, it gives beautiful color to your bread. So I'm going to turn it out on a rack, because you don't want to let it sit directly on the board here, because the bottom will sweat and it'll make your crust kind of moist. And I'm going to brush this with some nice softened butter. You don't have to do that, but I really like the texture it gives the crust, and I like the way it makes it look. So you just want to brush that butter on while it's still good and hot, and I just brush it on the top. So it's been not quite an hour since I started, and here we are taking hot bread out of the oven. I'm going to let it cool and cut it. And I know it's hard, but yes, wait till it's cool. We're going to slice off some here. And you know, I've saved a little of this softened butter. And this is cutting right. And oh my, look. I want you to look. Isn't that beautiful? That is soft. Not like any whole wheat bread you've ever seen. And it's going to just taste marvelous. Let me get the butter. And no, I have no shame. I only eat one piece of bread a day. Some days I don't eat any. And I'm just really happy to have this quality of bread for the bread I'm going to eat. Oh my. That is just wonderful. Hope you try it. Hope you like it. Hope you come and get the recipe in our group. Wait, let me just show you this texture. What do you think? Is that a perfect loaf of bread or what? Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.